Truck driver gives a ride to a little girl beggar alone at night. Upon hearing her name, he is shattered. Interstate 95 wound through the heart of the United States, like an old scar cutting through the landscape. The sun began its descent on the horizon, painting the sky with orange hues that blended into red, creating a spectacle that Joseph Anthony, at 62, still admired even after 3 decades of crossing those roads. His truck, a Scania worn by time but still faithful, was his only companion on the long journeys he made hauling cargo across the country. On the dashboard, aside from the usual instruments, there was only a small faded photo, his daughter Caroline at 15, smiling on her birthday. Time had taken Caroline 5 years ago, leaving only memories and a void that Joseph carried wherever he went. That October afternoon, as he drove along the nearly deserted road, his thoughts wandered between memories and regrets. The radio played softly an old Robert Charles song, serving only as background music for his reflections. It was then that something unusual caught his attention on the shoulder. A small solitary figure walking along the edge of the road. Joseph slowed down, intrigued by the unlikely sight in such an isolated stretch. As he got closer, his heart tightened. It was a girl no more than 8 years old, carrying a worn-out backpack. Her simple, tattered clothes suggested something was wrong. Carefully, he stopped the truck a few meters ahead. For the first time in a long while, he felt something different from the usual emptiness, a restlessness, an urgency to help. He stepped out of the cab, approaching slowly, so as not to scare the little one. "Hi, little one. Are you okay? What are you doing out here alone?" he asked in his deep but gentle voice, keeping a safe distance so as not to intimidate her. The girl, with brown hair tied in a messy braid, looked up with frightened eyes. For a moment, Joseph saw in that gaze the same spark that had once enchanted him in Caroline's eyes. I'm going to see my aunt," she replied hesitantly, gripping the straps of her backpack tightly. Joseph, with years on the road, knew how to recognize a lie born of fear. "It's a bit far to go on foot, don't you think? And it's getting dark." The girl lowered her eyes, kicking a small pebble on the ground. Silence hung between them for a few seconds until she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "I ran away from the shelter." Those 3 words hit Joseph like a punch. His mind immediately filled with worries. A child alone on the road was an invitation to all kinds of danger. But there was something more, an inexplicable connection that made him want to protect this little stranger. "What's your name?" he asked, crouching down to her level, ignoring the protest from his knees. "Anna," she replied, still wary but no longer showing as much fear. "Anna, I'm Joseph. I know you don't know me, but I can't leave you here alone. How about we go to the next town? There's a police station there where we can get help." Anna took a step back, fear returning to her eyes. "I don't want to go back to the shelter." "Easy," Joseph raised his hands in a calming gesture. "First, let's get off this road, okay? You must be hungry. We can stop to eat something and talk more." The mention of food seemed to stir something in Anna. Her stomach growled audibly, and a small, embarrassed smile appeared on her lips. Joseph smiled back, feeling a tenderness he hadn't experienced in a long time. "I've got cookies and water in the truck, and I promise we won't do anything you don't want to, okay?" Anna looked at the empty road, then at the darkening sky, and finally at Joseph. Something about him, maybe the kindness in his tired eyes or the way he spoke, made her nod in agreement. Joseph guided her to the truck, helping her climb into the cab. As they resumed their journey, now at a slower pace, he watched out of the corner of his eye as Anna took a cookie from the pack he had offered. The girl ate slowly, as if trying to make the food last as long as possible. The sun finally set, and the first stars began to dot the sky. In the truck's cab, a lonely old man and a lost girl continued their journey, unaware that fate was about to intertwine their stories in a way neither of them could have imagined. The rumble of the truck engine was the only sound breaking the silence of the night. Anna, little by little, seemed to relax in Joseph's presence. Her small hands no longer gripped the backpack so tightly, and her curious eyes wandered around the cabin, lingering for a few moments on the faded photo on the dashboard. "Who is she?" Anna asked, pointing to the photograph. Joseph felt the familiar tightness in his chest as he looked at the image of Caroline. "My daughter," he replied, his soft voice carrying a note of longing. "Where is she?" Left 5 years ago, Joseph answered, choosing his words carefully. She was a teacher, you know. She loved children. Anna stayed silent for a moment, as if processing the information. My mum left too, she finally said, her small voice barely rising above the noise of the engine. It's been so long I can hardly remember her face. Joseph glanced briefly at the girl, noticing how she shrank into the seat that was too big for her size. And your dad? Never met him, Anna shrugged, a gesture that seemed odd for someone so young. I just kept moving from shelter to shelter. The conversation was interrupted by a strange noise coming from the engine. Joseph frowned, recognizing the worrisome sound. The truck began to lose power, and he had to guide it to the shoulder. What happened? Anna asked, fear creeping back into her voice. Calm down, little one. It's just a mechanical issue. Joseph tried to reassure her as he brought the vehicle to a complete stop. I'll take a look. As Joseph stepped out to check the engine, Anna began rummaging through her backpack, perhaps searching for something to distract herself. A piece of paper slipped out and slid under the bench. Joseph, who had just returned to the cabin after realizing they would need help, picked up the fallen document without her noticing. His heart nearly stopped when he read the last name on the paper. Santos. The same last name as his Caroline. His eyes scanned the page, absorbing information that made his head spin. It was a shelter record, with details about Anna and her mother. Did you manage to fix it? Anna's voice brought him back to reality. Quickly, he folded the paper and put it in his pocket. I'll need to call a mechanic, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the turmoil in his thoughts. But don't worry, there's a support station a few miles back. I'll call them. As they waited for help, Joseph watched Anna with new eyes. Could it be possible? The dates matched the time he lost contact with Caroline. And there was something in the girl's gestures, in the way she tilted her head when thinking, that reminded him so much of his daughter. Anna began to talk about her life at the shelter, her words spilling out slowly, like water from a leaky faucet. She spoke about loneliness, about how hard it was to see other children getting adopted while she stayed behind. But it was when she mentioned the reason for her escape that Joseph felt his hair stand on end. There's a man there. He does bad things, she whispered, hugging her knees. No one believes the kids when we tell them. That's why I ran away. Joseph felt a wave of protectiveness wash over him. Regardless of his suspicions about their possible connection, he couldn't ignore what he was hearing. He needed to help that girl. The sound of an approaching tow truck lit up the dark road. As the mechanic worked on the truck, Joseph made a decision. I wouldn't let Anna go back to that place. First, I needed to confirm my suspicions, get a DNA test. Then I would investigate the allegations about the shelter. 2 hours later, with the truck running again, they resumed their journey. Anna had fallen asleep, her small head resting against the window. Joseph drove in silence, his mind a storm of thoughts and possibilities. The paper in his pocket felt as heavy as lead. If his suspicions were correct, that child was his granddaughter. The daughter Caroline never had the chance to introduce to him. A wave of regret hit him as he thought about all the fights, the distance that kept him from being present in his daughter's final years. The lights of a city began to dot the horizon. Joseph knew that once they arrived, a battle would begin. He would have to face bureaucracy, convince the authorities, protect Anna. But for the first time in 5 years, he felt he had a purpose again. He looked once more at the sleeping girl and made a silent promise. He wouldn't abandon her. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The Springfield police station was a small, old building with peeling walls that betrayed years of neglect. When Joseph parked the truck in front of the place, it was already past 9 at night. Anna, who had woken up minutes earlier, clung to her backpack with renewed strength. I don't want to go in, she murmured, her eyes fixed on the station door. They'll send me back. Joseph turned off the engine and turned to her. Anna, I need you to trust me. I won't let anyone take you back there without first investigating what you told me. The girl hesitated, her eyes meeting Joseph's. There was something in that look, a mix of fear and hope, that made the old trucker's heart tighten. Slowly, she nodded. Inside the station, they were greeted by an officer named Regina, who seemed to be the only person on duty at that moment. She led them to a small room where an old fan lazily spun on the ceiling. So, you found the girl on the road? Regina asked, after hearing Joseph's initial account. Yes, and she told me some very serious things about the shelter where she was staying, Joseph replied, feeling the weight of the paper with Caroline's last name in his pocket. But there's more. Before he could continue, the door to the room opened. A man in a suit entered, followed by a social worker. He introduced himself as Rodrigo Mendez, the director of the New Dawn shelter. "Anna," he exclaimed, a smile on his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "We were so worried." Anna's reaction was instant. She shrank back in her chair, instinctively seeking Joseph's protection. The old truck driver noticed how her hands trembled. "Officer," Joseph addressed Regina, his voice steady, "before any decision is made, I need to inform you that I have reason to believe this girl is my granddaughter." The silence that followed his statement was absolute. Rodrigo Mendez furrowed his brow, his expression alternating between surprise and irritation. "This is absurd," the shelter director protested. "Anna has been under our care for years. If there were any relatives, we would have located them by now." Joseph pulled the paper from his pocket, the one that had fallen from Anna's backpack. "This document shows that she shares the same last name as my daughter. The dates coincide with the period when I lost contact with Caroline." Regina examined the document carefully. "Even if there is that possibility, Mr. Joseph, we need to follow legal procedures. A DNA test would be necessary to confirm the relationship." "How long would that take?" Joseph asked, feeling the urgency of the situation. "Weeks, perhaps months," the social worker replied. "And during that time, Anna would need to return to the shelter." "No," Anna cried, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't make me go back." Joseph stood up, his imposing figure dominating the small room. "Officer, this girl has made serious allegations about the treatment at the shelter. We can't just ignore that." Regina seemed to ponder the situation. "The accusations need to be investigated, of course, but we also need to follow protocol. What if—" Joseph hesitated, gathering courage. "What if I offered to be her temporary guardian, while the DNA test is being conducted and the complaints are looked into?" Rodrigo Mendez laughed disdainfully. "A single truck driver with no fixed residence? That's completely inappropriate." "I have a home," Joseph countered. "In Portland. I can stop taking long trips for a while. I have savings." The social worker began taking notes in her folder, while Regina checked something on her computer. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fan and Anna's muffled sobs. "There is a precedent," Regina finally said. "In exceptional cases, when there is well-founded suspicion of kinship and allegations of irregularities, we can grant temporary custody under constant supervision by the Child Protective Services." Joseph felt a glimmer of hope, but Rodrigo Mendez didn't seem willing to give up easily. "This is irregular. I will file an appeal immediately," the shelter director declared, his face red with anger. "Mr. Mendez," Regina interrupted him, her voice now carrying an authority she hadn't shown before. "You seem very eager to take this girl back, considering the accusations she has made. Perhaps we should initiate a more detailed investigation into your establishment?" The shelter director visibly paled. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its previous confidence. "Obviously, we will follow what the law dictates," he said, standing up. "But this isn't over." After he left, Regina began filling out a series of forms. "I will need all your documents, Mr. Joseph, and we will have to visit your residence as soon as possible." Joseph nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility he was taking on. He looked at Anna, who had stopped crying and was now watching him with a mix of gratitude and apprehension. "Everything will be all right, little one," he whispered, extending his hand to her. After a moment of hesitation, Anna took it, her small fingers intertwining with his. As Regina continued with the bureaucratic procedures, Joseph knew that night was just the beginning. A long battle awaited them, but for the first time in a long while, he felt truly alive. He had a purpose again, a mission that went beyond his deliveries and solitary travels. Dawn found Joseph and Anna in a small hotel near the police station. After a restless night, both were trying to adjust to the new reality unfolding before them. Joseph prepared a simple breakfast with food he had bought from a nearby bakery, while Anna organized her small backpack. "Do you like bread with butter?" Joseph asked, trying to establish a routine that would bring some comfort to the girl. Anna nodded timidly, sitting at the table. It was then that knocks on the door interrupted the moment. Joseph opened it to find Regina accompanied by a woman who appeared to be around 40 years old. "Good morning, Mr. Joseph," Regina greeted. "This is Marina Oliver. She knew your daughter Caroline." Joseph felt the air escape his lungs. Marina stepped into the room, her eyes immediately finding Anna, who was watching the scene with curiosity. "She looks just like Carol," Marina murmured, emotional. "The same eyes, the same way she tilts her head. How did you know my daughter?" Joseph asked, gesturing to a chair for Marina to sit. Marina took a deep breath before beginning. "I was Caroline's colleague at the school where she taught. We became close friends. I was with her when she found out she was pregnant." Joseph had to lean against the wall. "She never told me." "Carol wanted to tell you, Joseph," Marina explained, her voice soft. "But you two had been fighting for months. She was afraid of your reaction, especially because the baby's father had disappeared as soon as he found out about the pregnancy." Anna, who had been quietly eating her bread, looked up, clearly interested in the story of her origin. "Carol decided to have the baby on her own," Marina continued. "She was so happy, so determined. She made all the preparations, decorated a room. But she had complications late in the pregnancy." Joseph closed his eyes, remembering the phone call he had received that fateful night. When he arrived at the hospital, Caroline had already passed, leaving only a premature baby fighting for her life. "I tried to find you," Marina said, tears in her eyes. "But you had changed your number, your address. When I finally got a lead, Anna was already in the adoption system." Regina, who had been silently observing until then, intervened. "That's why I came to bring her, Mr. Joseph. Marina's testimony can help speed up the DNA test and the process for permanent custody." Joseph approached Anna, who had abandoned her breakfast and was now hugging her knees, a posture he was beginning to recognize as a sign of insecurity. "Anna," he called softly, "do you want to know more about your mother?" The girl hesitated but eventually nodded. Marina opened her bag and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "I kept some photos," she said, spreading the images on the table. "Look, this is your mother pregnant with you." Anna picked up the photo carefully, as if it were something precious that could break. In the image, Caroline was smiling radiantly, one hand on her already visible belly. "Did she love me?" Anna asked, her voice so low it was barely audible. "More than anything," Marina replied, holding the girl's hand. "She talked to you every day, sang to you, told you stories. She had so many plans." Joseph watched the scene with a broken heart, thinking of all the moments he had lost because of his pride, over silly fights that now seemed so insignificant. "There's one more thing," Marina said, pulling a small package from her bag. "Carol left this at the hospital, asking that it be given to the baby when she grew up. But with all the confusion, it ended up staying with me. It was a delicate necklace with a star-shaped pendant." Joseph recognized the jewel immediately. It had been a gift he gave Caroline on her 15th birthday. "She never took this necklace off," Joseph murmured, his voice choked with emotion. Anna touched the pendant reverently, her eyes glistening with held-back tears. Marina helped her put on the necklace, and for a moment, the resemblance between the girl and Caroline became even more evident. "Mr. Joseph," Regina called, her voice professional but gentle. "With Marina's testimony and this evidence, I can try for a court order to expedite the DNA test. But I need you all to come with me to the courthouse today." Joseph nodded, still absorbing all the revelations. Hannah stood up, and for the first time since they had met, she was the one who reached for his hand. "Grandpa?" she called hesitantly, testing the new word in her language. "Can we take Mum's pictures?" Joseph felt his heart expand at that simple word. "Of course, little one. We can take all of them." As they gathered their things to leave, Joseph noticed Marina watching him with a sad smile. "She forgave you, you know," Marina said softly. "In her last days, Carol talked a lot about finding you, about making peace. She wanted her daughter to have a grandfather." Joseph couldn't respond, but he gently squeezed Marina's shoulder in gratitude. Together, they left the hotel, each carrying a piece of Caroline's story. Joseph with his memories, Marina with her photos, and Anna with the necklace her mother had loved so much. The Justice Courthouse was an imposing building that made Anna seem even smaller. As they climbed the marble stairs, she tightly held Joseph's hand, her mother's necklace shining timidly under the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Regina guided them through endless hallways until they reached a room where a stern-faced judge awaited them. Dr. Beatrice Santos had grey hair tied in a perfect bun and gold-framed glasses resting on the tip of her nose. "So, this is the case of the girl from the shelter," she said, flipping through a folder on her desk. Her eyes lingered on Anna for a moment before turning to Joseph. "You claim to be the grandfather?" "Yes, Your Honor," Joseph replied, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "I have circumstantial evidence and a witness who knew my daughter." Marina, who was accompanying them, stepped forward, presenting the photos and documents she had brought. The judge examined them meticulously, her face revealing no emotion. "Interesting," she murmured, adjusting her glasses. "But still, we need to follow legal procedures. A DNA test is essential." It was at that moment that the doors to the room opened, and Rodrigo Mendez entered, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Dr. Richard Vasquez, the lawyer for the shelter. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, his voice syrupy, "we are here to formally contest this case. Mr. Joseph is not in a position to care for a child. He is a truck driver with no fixed residence, no family structure. I have a home," Joseph protested, feeling his blood boil. "And I can stop traveling. I have enough savings." The judge raised her hand, calling for silence. "Dr. Vasquez, do you have any evidence that the petitioner would be unfit for temporary custody?" The lawyer hesitated for a moment. "Well, aside from the obvious conditions..." "Obvious conditions are not evidence," Dr. Beatrice interrupted sharply. "And from what I see here, there are serious allegations against the shelter that need to be investigated." Rodrigo Mendez paled again, but maintained his arrogant posture. "These are just stories from a confused child, Your Honor. There is no evidence." "I have evidence," a thin, trembling voice echoed through the room. Everyone turned to Anna, who had let go of Joseph's hand and taken a step forward. "I took photos with the caregiver's phone. It's all saved in my email." A heavy silence fell over the room. Regina immediately made some notes in her notebook, while Rodrigo Mendez seemed to have swallowed something bitter. The judge leaned back in her chair, looking directly at Anna. "Would you be able to access that email right now, dear?" Anna nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she typed on a computer that Regina had provided. The images that appeared on the screen made the judge frown, and Regina let out a surprised exclamation. "Regina!" Dr. Beatrice called, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I want a full investigation into the New Dawn shelter. Immediately." Turning to Joseph, her gaze softened a bit. "As for you, I will authorize temporary custody, conditional on weekly visits from the Child Protective Services and an urgent DNA test." "But, Your Honor," Dr. Vasquez tried to protest. "There's nothing more to discuss," the judge interrupted him, "and I suggest that you and your client remain available to the court for the next developments in this case." Rodrigo Mendez and his lawyer quickly left the room, their expressions a mix of anger and concern. Joseph felt Anna approach him again, seeking protection. "Mr. Joseph," Dr. Beatrice called, her voice gentler now, "do you understand the responsibility you're taking on?" "Yes, Your Honor," he replied without hesitation. "I know it won't be easy, but I'll do whatever it takes for her." The judge nodded, a small smile appearing on her lips. "Very well, Regina will help you with the necessary paperwork, and Anna," she addressed the girl, "you were very brave today. Keep it up." As Regina guided them to another room to handle the paperwork, Marina said goodbye, promising to stay in touch and bring more photos of Caroline. Joseph held the temporary custody documents as if they were a treasure, barely believing the turn his life had taken in less than 24 hours. "Grandpa," Anna called softly, holding his hand again. "Can we go home now?" Joseph felt his eyes fill with tears. "Yes, little one. Let's go home." The afternoon sun was already beginning to set when they finally left the courthouse. A new life was beginning for both of them, full of challenges and uncertainties, but also hope. In Joseph's pocket, the paper with the last name Santos no longer weighed as heavily as before. It was now a promise of a fresh start. The trip to Portland had never felt so long to Joseph. Instead of his usual cargo, he was now carrying something far more precious: his newly discovered granddaughter and all the hopes that came with her. Anna dozed in the passenger seat, Caroline's necklace glowing softly under the dashboard light. During a stop to refuel, Joseph took the opportunity to make a few calls. The first was to his friend Michael, who looked after his house during his trips. "Michael, I need you to get the house ready." "I'm bringing my granddaughter," Joseph said, still feeling strange saying that word. "Your granddaughter?" The surprise in Michael's voice was evident. "Joseph, what's this about?" "It's a long story, my friend, but I need you to tidy up Caroline's room. I'll need some basic things for an 8-year-old girl." As Joseph quickly explained the situation, Anna woke up and got out of the truck, timidly exploring the convenience store at the gas station. Her eyes lit up when she saw a small shelf with children's books. "Do you want to pick one?" Joseph asked, approaching after finishing the call. Anna bit her lip, hesitant. "Can I really?" "Of course you can. Actually, you can choose too. We have a long journey ahead of us." While Anna carefully examined the books with almost reverent attention, Joseph noticed how she always kept one eye on the door, as if fearing someone from the shelter might appear at any moment. "No one's going to take you away, little one," he assured her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now." Anna chose a book of fairy tales and another of adventures. On the cover of the second, a girl explored a mysterious forest with a lantern. Back on the road, Anna began to read aloud, her small voice gaining confidence as the story progressed. Joseph noticed she read very well for her age. "Your mother loved to read too," he commented during a pause in the reading. "She always had a different book in her hands." "Really?" Anna asked, her eyes shining with interest. "What else did she like to do?" Joseph smiled, diving into his memories. "She loved to draw. She had notebooks and more notebooks full of drawings. And music. Caroline played the guitar. Not very well, but she played with so much enthusiasm that no one dared to complain." Anna laughed for the first time since they'd met, a crystalline sound that warmed Joseph's heart. "I still have her guitar at home," he continued, "and the sketchbooks too. I kept everything." "Can I see them when we get there?" Anna asked, her voice a mix of hope and apprehension. "Of course you can. They're yours by right." The rest of the trip was filled with stories about Caroline. Joseph told her about how she decided to become a teacher, her passion for helping others, and how her smile could light up an entire room. Anna absorbed every word like a sponge, occasionally touching the pendant around her neck. When they finally arrived in Portland, the sky was painted with the colors of dusk. Joseph lived in a quiet neighborhood, in a simple but well-kept house. Michael was waiting for them on the porch, along with his wife Sandra, who was carrying a few shopping bags. "Welcome, dear," Sandra said as soon as Anna stepped out of the truck. "We've prepared a special room for you." Anna hid partially behind Joseph, still shy around strangers, but her curious eyes wandered over the front of the house, the small garden, and the curtains swaying in the windows. "Come on," Joseph encouraged her. "Let's go see your new home." The room that had once been Caroline's was transformed. Sandra had changed the bed sheets, added some colorful pillows, and laid out a new rug. On a shelf, Caroline's sketchbooks were neatly arranged alongside some children's books Sandra had brought. "Look what we found," Michael said, bringing out a box from the closet. Inside were some old photos of Caroline as a child, including one of her with Joseph at the zoo, both smiling at the camera. Anna picked up the photo carefully. "You look happy here," she remarked, looking at Joseph. "We were happy," he replied, his voice choked. "And we'll be happy again, little one. I promise." That night, after Michael and Sandra had left, Joseph prepared a simple dinner. Anna helped him set the table, moving around the kitchen cautiously, as if afraid of breaking something. "You know," she said as they ate, "in the zoo photo, Mom is wearing the same necklace I'm wearing now." Joseph nodded, surprised he hadn't noticed that detail before. "Yes, you're right. It was the first gift I gave her after I started working as a truck driver. And now it's mine," Anna whispered, more to herself than to Joseph. After dinner, when Joseph went to tuck her into bed, he found Anna flipping through one of Caroline's sketchbooks. Silent tears were on her face. "She drew so beautifully," Anna said, running her fingers over a sketch of a bird in full flight. "I wish I could have known her." Joseph sat on the edge of the bed, wrapping Anna in an awkward but tender hug. "She's here, little one. In every drawing, in every story, in every beat of your heart. And now, we have each other." Anna fell asleep holding the sketchbook, the star necklace glowing softly under the light of the lamp. Joseph stayed there for a long time, watching his granddaughter sleep, feeling that finally, after so long, His house was becoming a home again. The first week in Joseph's house brought challenges the old truck driver had never imagined facing. The routine that once revolved around trips and deliveries now had to adapt to the needs of a child. Anna, for her part, walked through the house as if stepping on eggshells, still unsure of her place in this new world. On Monday morning, Joseph faced his first big test, enrolling Anna in school. The nearest school was a public institution with a good reputation, but the bureaucratic process seemed endless. "We need her complete documents," the secretary explained, adjusting her glasses as she examined the temporary papers, "and a school record from the shelter." "But she's under my temporary guardianship," Joseph argued, showing the court order. "The judge ruled that she must be enrolled immediately." Anna held Joseph's hand tightly, her eyes fixed on a colorful mural with drawings by other children. A young teacher, passing through the hallway, noticed the situation and approached. "Can I help?" she asked, introducing herself as Fernanda. "I'm a third-grade teacher." After hearing the story, Fernanda intervened with the office. "We can do a diagnostic assessment while the documents are being processed. The law guarantees her right to education." Joseph smiled gratefully, while Anna looked curiously at Fernanda. The teacher had a gentle manner that reminded her of Caroline. "Do you like to draw, Anna?" Fernanda asked, noticing the notebook the girl was carrying. "They're my mum's drawings," Anna replied softly, opening the notebook to show her. She was a teacher, too. Fernanda examined the drawings with genuine interest. "They're beautiful. You know, we have a really cool art project at school. I think you'll love it." The diagnostic assessment revealed that, despite the constant changes in shelters, Anna had good academic development. "She reads very well," Fernanda commented, "and has above-average math comprehension for her age." On the way back home, Joseph noticed that Anna seemed more excited. "Did you like teacher Fernanda?" "She seems nice," Anna replied, playing with the pendant on her necklace. "And she has plants in her classroom, just like in Mum's notebook." At home, a surprise awaited them. Marina had mailed a package with more photos of Caroline, and to Anna's delight, a DVD of a school performance where her mother sang and played the guitar. As they watched the video, Joseph observed Anna's reactions. Every smile of Caroline on the screen was mirrored on her daughter's face. Every familiar gesture sparked a glimmer of recognition in the girl's eyes. "Grandpa," Anna called during dinner, "can I learn to play the guitar too?" Joseph felt his heart tighten. "Of course you can, sweetheart. I'll look for a teacher as soon as you settle into school." On Thursday, they received their first visit from the Child Protective Services. The counselor, a woman named Marcia, inspected the house and spoke at length with Anna. "How has it been living with your grandfather?" she asked kindly. Anna, who was drawing at the kitchen table, looked up. "It's good. He makes pancakes for breakfast and tells me stories about Mom, and I don't have to be afraid to sleep." The last sentence made Joseph and Marcia exchange a worried look. The investigation at the shelter was ongoing, and slowly, more children were starting to talk. On Saturday, Joseph took Anna to the park. It was a sunny day, and several families were enjoying the weekend. Anna watched the other children playing, hesitant to join them. "Go ahead," Joseph encouraged her. "You can play. What if you're not here when I come back?" she asked, revealing a fear she still carried. Joseph knelt down to her level, ignoring the protest from his knees. "Anna, look at me. I will never, ever abandon you. I'll always be here, on this same bench waiting for you." Anna hugged him tightly before running off to the swings, where two girls invited her to play. Joseph watched, moved, as his granddaughter slowly came out of her shell. On Sunday, while tidying up Anna's room together, they found an old box with more of Caroline's belongings. Inside was a diary Joseph had never seen before. "I think this is yours now," he said, handing the notebook to Anna. The girl held the diary as if it were a sacred treasure. "Do you think she wrote about me in here?" "There's only one way to find out," Joseph replied, sitting beside her on the bed. "Do you want me to read it with you?" Anna nodded, snuggling up next to her grandfather. Together they began to read Caroline's words, uncovering another piece of the puzzle that connected them. The first week was coming to an end, and though there was still a long road ahead, Joseph felt they were on the right path. Anna still had occasional nightmares and moments of fear, but each day brought small progress: a more frequent smile, a less hesitant hug, a freer laugh. On the bedroom wall next to Caroline's drawings, a new drawing was beginning to take shape. Made by Anna, it showed three figures holding hands, her, Joseph, and Caroline, united under a sky full of stars. The DNA test results arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Joseph was helping Anna with her homework when Regina called asking them to come to the courthouse the next day. The official confirmation of their relationship was just a formality. The bond between grandfather and granddaughter had already been sealed by something much stronger than genetics. However, the visit to the courthouse would bring more than just the confirmation they expected. In Dr. Beatrice's office, besides Regina, was a woman Joseph didn't know, but who made Anna shrink back instantly. "This is Clarice Rivers," Regina introduced. "She worked at the New Dawn shelter and has important information about the case." Clarice seemed nervous, twisting a handkerchief in her hands. "I should have spoken up sooner," she began, her voice trembling. "But I was afraid. Mr. Rodrigo, he has a lot of influence." The judge gestured for her to continue. Clarice took a deep breath before proceeding. "I started working at the shelter 3 years ago. At first, everything seemed normal, but soon I noticed strange things. Documents being altered, children being transferred without clear explanation." Joseph felt Anna squeeze his hand tighter. He knew her well enough now to understand she was reliving difficult memories. "When Anna arrived," Clarice continued, "something caught my attention. She had an old photo, a young woman with a star necklace, but Mr. Rodrigo took the photo from her, said it wasn't good to hold on to the past. It was the only photo I had of my mum," Anna whispered, touching the pendant around her neck. Clarice nodded, tears in her eyes. "I knew it was wrong, but he threatened us. They said no one would believe us, that we would lose our jobs." Regina was taking furious notes, while Dr. Beatrice maintained her stern expression. "Ms. Clarice, do you have proof of these irregularities?" "I do," she replied, pulling a flash drive from her bag. "I copied several documents, including the real entry records of the children. There are also—" She hesitated, looking at Anna with regret. "Records of relatives who tried to locate some children and were deliberately misled." Joseph felt a knot in his stomach. How many other families had been torn apart because of Rodrigo Mendez's greed and cruelty? "Your Honor," Regina interjected, "we already have 5 former employees cooperating with the investigation, and more than 20 children have provided consistent accounts of abuse and neglect." The judge removed her glasses, massaging her temples. "The district attorney's office is already aware of the situation. I want all documents related to the case on my desk by tomorrow." Turning to Joseph and Anna, her expression softened. "As for you, I have good news. The DNA test confirmed the relationship, and the reports from Child Protective Services are excellent. I am prepared to grant permanent custody." Anna, who had been quiet most of the time, lifted her head. "Does that mean no one can take me away from Grandpa?" "No one," Dr. Beatrice confirmed with a smile. "You are officially a family in the eyes of the law." On the way back home, they stopped at an ice cream shop to celebrate. Anna, savoring her chocolate ice cream, seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her small shoulders. "Grandpa," she called out suddenly, "do you think other kids will find their families too?" Joseph thought about all the revelations of that day, about the suffering that man had caused so many families. "I hope so, little one. Justice is working on it now." At home, Anna asked to watch Carolina's video again. There was a specific part she loved, where her mother sang a song about hope and new beginnings. "You know," Anna commented as they watched, "when I was at the shelter, I sometimes dreamed of someone singing to me. Do you think it was Mom?" Joseph hugged his granddaughter, feeling the tears she was trying to hide. "I'm sure it was, little one, I'm sure it was." That night, before bed, Anna made a new drawing. This time it showed the courthouse building, but with a special detail. Several children walking out of it hand in hand with their families, and above them all, a big, shining star. "It's for all the children to find their way back home," she explained, hanging the drawing next to the others. Joseph watched his granddaughter fall asleep, the star necklace glowing softly in the dark. He thought of Carolina, how proud she would be of her daughter, a girl who, despite so much suffering, still held hope in her heart. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city and its stories, preparing the ground for new beginnings. In the Santos house, grandfather and granddaughter slept peacefully, knowing that finally, after so many missteps, they were exactly where they were meant to be. A month had passed since the confirmation of permanent custody. Anna's room was now completely transformed. The once neutral walls displayed a growing collection of drawings, some by Carolina, others by Anna herself. In the corner, a new guitar rested on its stand, a gift from Michael and Sandra to celebrate the start of music lessons. It was Saturday morning and Joseph was preparing breakfast while listening to Anna try to strum the first chords she had learned. The off-key sound was music to his ears. It reminded him so much of Carolina in her early days of practice. "Grandpa," Anna called from the living room, "I think I got the C major chord." Joseph smiled, bringing the pancakes to the table. "Come eat first, little one, then you can show me." During breakfast, Anna talked excitedly about her school project. Teacher Fernanda had suggested that each student research their family and create an illustrated family tree. "Can I use Mom's drawings for the project?" "Can I?" she asked, spreading jelly on her pancake. "Of course you can, and I have some old photos that might help too." After breakfast, they went up to the attic to search for more family memories. Among dusty boxes, they found an album Joseph hadn't seen in years. "Look at this," he said, blowing the dust off the cover. "Here are pictures of your grandmother Helen." Anna picked up the album with reverent care. On the first page, a woman with a gentle smile held a baby, Caroline. "Mom looked like her," Anna observed, running her fingers over the photograph. "Very much so. And you have something of her too, you know. That way you tilt your head when you're thinking." They continued exploring the attic, each discovery bringing a new story. They found Caroline's old school uniform carefully stored in a box and Grandmother Helen's recipe notebook with notes in the margins. "Grandpa," Anna called, holding something in her hands. "What's this?" It was a small music box, slightly rusted but still intact. Joseph took it carefully, turning the crank. A soft melody filled the air. "Your grandmother used to play this for Caroline to sleep," he explained, his voice choked with emotion. "And then Caroline would sing this same song to her belly when she was pregnant with you." Anna hugged the music box to her chest, silent tears streaming down her face. "Can I keep it?" "It's rightfully yours, little one." They came down from the attic loaded with treasures, photos, the music box, old letters, and even some drawings Caroline had made as a child. In the living room, Anna carefully arranged everything for her school project. "You know what would be cool," she said, gluing a photo onto the poster. "To make a book with all these stories, so we don't forget." The idea deeply moved Joseph. "We can do this together. You illustrate, and I'll help with the stories." The rest of the morning was dedicated to starting this project. Anna decided to begin with the story of the music box, drawing her grandmother Helen in a rocking chair, with Caroline on her lap. In the afternoon, they received a surprise visit. Marina showed up bringing more photos and, to Anna's delight, a video of a June festival where Caroline danced the quadrille. "I found this treasure stored in an old box," Marina explained as they watched the recording. "Caroline was the bride, remember, Joseph?" Joseph nodded, laughing as he watched his daughter twirl in the dance. "She practiced for weeks. She was so nervous she almost gave up. But she looked so happy in the video," Anna commented, carefully observing every movement of her mother. "Your mother was like that," Marina smiled. "When she committed to something, she gave it her all." During dinner, Anna was thoughtful, playing with her star pendant. "What are you thinking about, little one?" Joseph asked. "It's just..." She hesitated. "Every day I discover more things about Mom. It's like putting together a puzzle. Sometimes I feel sad for not having known her, but at the same time, it's like she's leaving clues for me, you know?" Joseph felt his heart tighten. "And she did, Anna. In every drawing, every photo, every song, and especially in you." After dinner, Anna asked to play the guitar for Joseph. The chords were still shaky, and she made a few mistakes, but she managed to play a simplified version of the song Caroline sang in the school video. "It's still not very good," she said, blushing. "It's perfect," Joseph replied, tears in his eyes. "Your mother would be so proud." Before going to sleep, Anna placed the music box on her nightstand next to the photo of Caroline. The gentle melody lulled her dreams, creating an invisible bridge between past and present, uniting 3 generations in a single lullaby. Joseph, watching his granddaughter fall asleep, thought about how life took extraordinary turns. A year ago, he was just a lonely old truck driver, carrying the weight of guilt and longing. Now he had a purpose, a family, a chance to do things differently. In Anna's room, the music box continued to play its sweet melody, like a promise that some stories, even when they seem over, can have new and beautiful chapters. Spring arrived, bringing new beginnings. The garden at the Santos's house, once abandoned, now displayed colorful flower beds that Anna tended to with dedication. Every blooming flower was celebrated as a small victory, a symbol of the fresh start she and Joseph were living. On a sunny September morning, Regina called with important news. The case of the New Dawn shelter had been concluded. Rodrigo Mendez and his accomplices would face justice for their actions, and several children were being reunited with their biological families. "Some families want to meet you, Anna," Regina explained when they came to visit. "Your testimony and your photos helped crack the entire case. You're a hero to many children." Anna, who was watering her flowers when Regina arrived, blushed deeply. "I just did what Mom would have done. She always wrote in her diary letters that we need to help those in need." Joseph watched his granddaughter with pride. Over the past few months, she had blossomed like the flowers in her garden. The nightmares were becoming rarer, and her once shy smile now lit up the entire house. "There's a special surprise," Regina continued, pulling an envelope from her bag. "We found this in the shelter's archives." It was the photo Clarice had mentioned, the one Rodrigo had taken from Anna. Caroline, young and radiant, wearing the star necklace with a hand resting on her pregnant belly. "My photo!" Anna exclaimed, clutching the paper to her chest. "I thought I'd never see it again." That afternoon, after Regina left, Anna asked to go to the cemetery to visit Caroline. It was the first time she felt ready for it. Joseph bought a bouquet of daisies, his daughter's favorite. At the cemetery, Anna surprised Joseph by softly singing the song she had practiced so much on the guitar. Her voice, sweet and clear, carried the same emotion that Caroline used to convey. "I think she can hear it," Anna said afterward, arranging the flowers on the headstone. "Just like I used to hear her singing to me at the shelter." Back at the house, they found Marina waiting on the porch with an excited expression. "You need to see this," she said, barely containing her excitement. "I was organizing some old things and found something incredible." It was a notebook unlike the others with a faded blue cover. Inside, in Caroline's neat handwriting, was a fully illustrated children's story. She was writing this when... Marina hesitated, choosing her words. "When you were about to be born, Anna, it's the story of a star that fell from the sky and was adopted by a garden of flowers." Anna flipped through the pages with reverence, taking in each drawing, each carefully written word. "There's a dedication," Joseph noticed, pointing to the first page. "To my little star," Anna read aloud, tears glistening in her eyes. "Wherever you shine, you'll always be my most beautiful light." Marina smiled, moved. "Carol always said she wrote this story thinking about the future, to one day tell it to you." "And she did," Anna replied, holding the necklace. "It just took a little longer." That night, after Marina left, Anna worked on her own secret project, an illustrated story about a lonely truck driver who meets a little adventurer on the road. "It's for the school writing contest," she explained when Joseph found her hunched over the notebook. "Teacher Fernanda said real stories are the most beautiful." Joseph sat beside her, watching the drawings that so closely resembled Caroline's style. "And how does this story end?" Anna smiled, that smile that was all her own, yet carried echoes of Caroline and Helen. "With love, Grandpa." All the best stories end with love. Later, when Joseph went to check on her, he found Anna asleep, clutching Caroline's blue notebook. The music box played softly, and through the slightly open window, a fragrant breeze from the garden drifted in. On the wall, the mural of drawings told a story of loss and reunion, of pain and healing, of a love that transcended time and found new ways to blossom. Between Caroline's drawings and Anna's, between the past and the present, there was an invisible thread stronger than any distance. Joseph adjusted the blanket over his granddaughter and gently kissed her forehead. On the nightstand, the star necklace glowed under the lamplight, like a beacon guiding the way back home. A path that, even with its twists and turns, had led each of them exactly where they were meant to be. The school's literary contest was coming to an end, and Anna could barely contain her excitement. Her illustrated story, The Truck Driver and the Star, had been selected as a finalist. Joseph watched with pride as she rehearsed her presentation for the 10th time in the living room. "What if I forget the words?" she asked, nervously twisting the hem of her new blouse. which Sandra had helped her pick out especially for the event. "Impossible, little one," Joseph smiled, adjusting the star necklace around her neck. "You know this story better than anyone." The morning of the presentation arrived with radiant sunshine. The school auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, and students filled the seats while the finalists prepared backstage. Among the audience, Joseph recognized several familiar faces. Marina, who wouldn't miss this moment for anything. Michael and Sandra, who had become like an aunt and uncle to Anna. And, to his surprise, Regina and some families from the old shelter who had grown close. Fernanda, the teacher who had first welcomed Anna, took the stage to introduce the finalists. When it was his granddaughter's turn, Joseph felt his heart race with emotion. Anna appeared on stage carrying her sketchbook and something else, a guitar. Her voice, initially timid, grew stronger as she began her presentation. "This is a story about encounters," she began, gently strumming the guitar strings. "About how sometimes we need to get lost to find our true way back home." The illustrations from her story were projected on the screen as she narrated, weaving the tale with snippets of the song she had learned, the same one Caroline used to sing. The drawings showed not just the encounter on the road, but the entire journey. The initial fear, the discovery of kinship, the nights of nightmares, and the days of healing. "Some people think that family is only those who are born together," Anna continued, her voice clear and firm. "But sometimes family is who we find along the way, who helps us pick up the pieces and build something new." On the last page of her story, she had drawn the garden of her home, full of colorful flowers, with 3 stars shining in the sky, 1 large and 2 small, representing 3 generations of women from the Santos family. "And even those who have already left," she concluded, strumming the guitar strings one last time, "continue to shine in our hearts, guiding our path like stars in the sky." The silence that followed her performance lasted only a second before the audience erupted into applause. Joseph didn't try to hold back the tears streaming down his face, and he noticed he wasn't the only one moved in the auditorium. When the results were announced, no one was surprised to hear Anna's name as the winner. But the real prize came afterward, when several families who had gone through similar situations came to thank her for giving voice to their stories. "You're very brave," said a girl slightly younger than Anna, hugging her. "Your story helped me not be afraid to talk about what I've been through." On the way back home, Anna held her trophy with one hand, and the other was firmly intertwined with Joseph's. She was different. There was a new confidence in her eyes, a glow that went beyond the pride of victory. "Grandpa," she called when they were almost home, "do you think Mom would be proud?" Joseph stopped the car for a moment, turning to his granddaughter. "Anna, your mother is bursting with pride right now, and so am I." At home, before bed, Anna did something different. Instead of asking to hear stories about Caroline, she wanted to tell a story to Joseph. "Once upon a time, there was a star that thought it was alone in the universe," she began, her voice soft in the dim light of the room. "Until one day it discovered that being part of a constellation is much better than shining alone." Joseph listened, amazed, as his granddaughter turned her own story into a fairy tale, where pain gave way to hope, and fear transformed into love. Caroline was there too, in the way she told the story, in the smile between the words, in the ability to see beauty even in the darkest moments. The music box played softly in the background, its old melody blending with Anna's young voice, creating a unique symphony of past and present, of losses and reunions, of endings that are, in fact, just new beginnings. 5 years had passed since that night on the deserted road. The Santos family's garden, now lush and full of life, was a living testament to how time could turn wounds into flowers. Anna, at 13, had become a lively and creative teenager. Her increasingly elaborate drawings decorated not only her room, but also a small gallery in the school library, where she coordinated an art therapy project for children who, like her, had gone through difficult times. On a particularly special Saturday afternoon, the Santos's backyard was full of life and movement. It was the day of the official launch of the New Dawn Stars project, an initiative born from Anna's story and now helping other children find their way back home. "Are you sure you don't want me to give the speech, kiddo?" Joseph asked, adjusting the tie that Anna had insisted he wear. She smiled, that smile that blended Caroline's sweetness with her own newfound strength. "No, Grandpa. This story is mine to tell too. The backyard had been transformed. Colorful banners danced in the gentle breeze, and several tables displayed artwork made by the children in the program. In a special corner, protected by a tent, was an exhibit that told the story of the Santos family. Photos of Helen, drawings of Caroline, and Anna's illustrations, all connected by a golden thread that snaked between the frames. Regina was there, now the coordinator of a special family reunification program. Marina, who had become a constant presence in their lives, was arranging the final photos on the display board. Michael and Sandra were helping with the last-minute preparations, while teacher Fernanda guided a group of children rehearsing a musical performance. When all the guests had arrived, families, officials, shelter representatives, and most importantly, children still searching for their place in the world, Anna stepped onto the small makeshift stage. Her guitar, now an inseparable companion, was tuned and ready. 5 years ago, she began, her voice clear and steady, I was a lost girl on a dark road. Today, I'm here to say that no child should ever feel lost or alone. Her words touched every heart in the crowd, especially those who knew the pain of abandonment and the joy of reunion. The New Dawn Stars project was born from a story of love. The love of a mother who, even though she's no longer here, left clues for her daughter to find her way back. The love of a grandfather who turned his loneliness into a shelter. And the love of all the people who helped us turn our story into hope for others. Joseph watched his granddaughter with a heart overflowing with pride. The project, which had started as a small support group at school, had grown into an official organization, helping to reconnect families and offering support through art and music. Anna continued her speech, weaving words with music. Her hands, which once trembled while playing the first chords, now moved confidently across the guitar strings. The song Caroline had sung in the school video had become the unofficial anthem of the project, a reminder that hope could survive even in the darkest moments. After the official ceremony, while the children played in the garden and the adults chatted in small groups, Anna led Joseph to a special flower bed she had prepared in secret. Look, Grandpa, she pointed to 3 rose bushes that had just bloomed. I planted one for each of us, Grandma Helen, Mom, and me. Joseph hugged his granddaughter, watching as the roses swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. Somehow, those 3 flowers perfectly represented their journey, deep roots of love that survived all seasons. At night, when the last guests had already left, Anna and Joseph Anthony sat on the porch, as they often did. The music box, now restored, played its eternal melody as they shared a cup of hot chocolate. You know, Grandpa, Anna said, fiddling with the star pendant she never took off her neck, sometimes I think that night on the road wasn't a coincidence. Mom must have been guiding us, like a star in the sky. Joseph smiled, thinking about how destiny had woven mysterious paths to bring them together. I'm sure she was, little one. I'm sure she was. In the garden, the 3 rose bushes swayed under the starry sky, their flowers glowing like little beacons in the night. And above them, the stars twinkled with a special light, as if Caroline from somewhere was smiling proudly at her little family, who had finally found their own way back home.